so humid and sticky. It's not nice anymore.
Hello relationships and everything in between outside of it. I'm Sophia and welcome back to a new video. I still don't know how I have the breath to say that, but it's fine. Today we were doing something that I've seen quite a lot on YouTube recently, and I thought I should just do it because like it's my first year doing book videos and like I have to still catch up on the trends. Do you know what I mean? But it's basically people just show, because I know that people, they like sum up all the books they've read in a year, but we're kind of halfway the year, so people decide to do it. Let's do a halfway point. Why shouldn't I do that? I think it would be fun to do it. I think it's an experience. Sorry if the angle keeps changing. I'm very picky, if you haven't noticed yet. Okay, so I think we should just start because otherwise, you know, we have a lot to get through. So let's just start with the basics, like how many books I've read this year. By the way, today is the 14th of July. We're a bit over halfway the year, but who cares? You know, you still get my point. You still get what I'm trying to say, yeah? I have read 32 books so far, and my goal at the start of the year was to read 10 books. Then I changed to 15. Then I changed I think to like 30. And then now I've changed to 50 books. It's like a book a week, which I think is manageable. And I think that's a pretty good goal. Like 50 books in a year, I think that's like, I don't know. I would be really, really proud of that. But yeah, let's just start off. So the first book that I read this year was As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is the third and final book in the Good Girls Guide to Murder series. I actually read this in my first ever 24-hour readathon, so if you want to watch that, you can. I mean, it's one of my most watched videos, so you've probably watched it. Yeah, no, I loved the series overall. I think I gave the first book 5 stars, the second book 5 stars, and I gave this book 4 stars. You know, I saw it coming, and in some books that, like, I don't mind, but the big plot twist was, like, here, and then the rest was just, like, resolution and, like, resolving the issue, and I was just kind of like, look at this disgusting tapping, okay? You'll see that over the months it gets better. I recommend the series to everyone, even if you're not very into murder mystery and all that stuff. Like, everyone likes it. It's YA murder mystery, so it's also easily written. It's easy to get through. Massive recommend, yeah. Moving on, this is another book I read in my 24-hour readathon, and this is Ash. Again, really shitty tapping. But Ash, it's basically like a retelling of Cinderella, but then more, yeah, it's like lesbian, and it's kind of fantasy. I don't know, I got into it and it was pretty okay, but then the majority of the book was very repetitive, and towards the end I just didn't like it anymore. Yeah, this is the only book I've ever given 2 stars. So, yeah, I mean, my ratings very changed throughout the months, and ratings will probably get lower because I'm starting to be a bit more strict. And I started this in my 24-hour readathon, but I didn't finish it, which is 13 minutes, and 13 minutes had me in a chokehold. Just never picked it up and never seemed that interesting. Also, like, an actual person on the cover, that kind of threw me off. And I just had other books I would rather read, so I just never actually, like, you know, I finally decided to read the blurb, and I was like, fuck, this is actually interesting. Like, now I remember why I bought it. This girl, she ends up in an accident, which she drowns and dies for 13 minutes, hence the title. They kind of get double perspective because you get, like, intakes with doctors from the girl that drowned, but also then just like the main character, and I loved it. I'm pretty sure I gave this 5 stars. So the next book I read, Love Hypothesis. Again, really shitty tapping. We're not going to talk about it, but this is the first romance book I ever really read, and then I saw this everywhere and everyone said it was really good, and it was an offer, so I just decided to buy it, and I flew through this book. Okay, I loved it so much. Workplace romance, like, nobody really likes him, and then she needs to date somebody because she told her best friend that she's dating this guy, and she kind of just lies to her and say that they're dating, and yeah. This did start off as a Wattpad book, and in some parts you can notice, but it didn't throw me off because sometimes that throws you off. Really excited for her to publish more books, and I cannot wait. I gave this 5 stars, obviously. I was very easy in throwing out 5 stars. Moving on, I read Normal People. This was the same kind of thing where I decided to read different genres. I actually have a whole video on that. Normal People, and I heard so much about Sally Rooney, especially, you know, if you watch any of Jack Edwards' videos, I think Normal People or just Sally Rooney gets mentioned at least once. I read this and I loved it so much that I gave this copy to my English teacher because I was like, you should read it, and they're actually going to think about now putting it into the curriculum. If you read for more plot-driven books, I wouldn't recommend any of Sally Rooney's books, really. This is very character-driven and it gets repetitive at some point, but I don't know, I was still so intrigued that I continued reading, and I really like the characters. Well, some of them, not all of them. I gave it 4 stars because, you know, it was a bit repetitive and there were a few things that I don't like. Also, Sally Rooney doesn't use quotation marks, so just be aware of that. But I loved it and I ate it up, and I will probably read more of Sally Rooney's work just because I loved it. Moving on. I'm really scared because I know for a fact that my camera's gonna die soon. Just because it always does during these types of videos, but yeah, moving on. Then I read The Therapist. It's a murder mystery about this couple that moves into this newly renovated circle in London. It's basically just a gated community, and the main character finds out something about the past of the house and wants to now really find out what happened and all the details of it. And then she kind of gets a feeling that someone's watching her, so it's creepy, intriguing, and gripping all at the same time. And these are the types of books that I love, and I've never seen anyone talk about this. I still haven't seen anyone talk about this, but a few people said in my comments that they have read it or that they have it on their TBR. And some people said that they did predict the ending. I didn't. I don't know why. I didn't see it coming. Maybe if you read more between the lines, you might have, but I didn't. So by the end, I was shocked. I was in a chokehold, and I didn't want to let this go because I loved this book so much. And I just wasn't ready to read something else because I knew it wouldn't be as good as this. 100%, I recommend this one. Moving on. I read Coraline. This was a one-sitting read. You know, it's really short and has a few drawings in it. Font is also massive. Like, look at this. It's massive font. Coraline is one of my favorite movies. I loved it as a kid and I love it now. Every Halloween I watch it at least once. Sometimes not even during Halloween, like I think I watched it like a couple of months ago. Yeah, no, I loved it, and then, you know, I thought maybe I should really read the book, probably. I just gave this 5 stars because it's my bae. I read The Perfect Wife. This author, my mom has a shit ton of books of, so she gave me all of them, and she was like, you're gonna read all of them. And I was like, okay, maybe I should, you know, start on that because I had the entire list and I still hadn't started it for like a couple of months now. It's about a woman, like a wife, and she wakes up in a hospital bed. There's no memory how she ever got there. Really early in the book we find out what happened. Well, not exactly what happened, but kind of why she like is in the hospital basically. It's such a weird but interesting book. Like, I've never read anything like it, and it was very intriguing. But the ending was so confusing that I had to look it up on the internet. And all I could find is that people were as confused as me. And then a few people said, I think this is the ending, but I'm really not sure. And I read over it multiple times. Like, I read the last 2 chapters, I think, like 3 times to really understand what was happening. Still not close. So that really brought me down. But I still really like the writing, so I'm definitely going to read more of the books that my mom gave me. This is going to take forever. The next part, it's basically just like TikTok books because I did a video on it, so then obviously it's going to be a lot of them. But the first book that I read for that video was Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. This was also the first Colleen Hoover book I ever read. And I know that a lot of people, either you love Colleen Hoover or you hate her. Well, not her as a person, but her books and her writing. I didn't expect this. She always opens her book very intense, like very gripping. I was really interested in this book. Like, I tried to read whenever I could, and the ending had me in tears. It did. And not bawling my eyes out like I had with The Notebook. I recently watched The Notebook for the first time, and you don't want to know how hard I cried. I was trying to hold it in because I was with other people, but if I was alone, oh, and it was still really sad. And like, after I heard a few things from a few people, I was like, yeah, no, like, I understand where you're coming from, but I have decided that I'm not gonna let other people's opinions and ratings affect mine. I let myself get influenced a bit too much. So I've just decided to actually almost barely look at ratings anymore. The next book I read, The Midnight Library. The Midnight Library is about this girl who decides to end her life, and then she ends up in this library, and every book in the library is a different life path that she could have chosen. And it kind of goes that it's a bit more character driven than plot driven, but just like the meaning of the book and the message that it's trying to like send out, I thought was really nice. Just because I feel like it's something that people should have read because it's such a wonderful story and a meaningful story as well. I expected it to be more plot driven, so I was a bit caught off, but by the end I was touched inside. Moving on. Next book I read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Again, very popular book talk book, but I bought it, as you can see, for £5. It was an absolute steal. The works. But I bought it and I was like, I have to read it eventually, because I kept putting it off, and I started it and I actually really enjoyed it. Yeah, so I was enjoying it, and then kind of, it's kind of a bit my own fault, but halfway through the book I decided to read the synopsis again, and then I figured out the end. Not the whole end. I think I maybe missed like one detail, but the rest I understood and guessed. So it is kind of my fault, but on the other hand, you shouldn't make it that obvious in the synopsis. I still really liked it. I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. I liked it, but because I guessed it, I was just upset. Just another popular book, The Thursday Murder Club. And what happened with this book was pretty interesting. I read it and then I was really enjoying it. And then I finished it and I was like, huh? What happened? And I have to read over it because the majority of the chapters are like different perspectives, and only one perspective gets justified, which is Joyce. And the rest you kind of have to figure out while reading. And I have read books like that and I don't mess up who is who, if that makes sense. But in this book, I did. And I just couldn't figure it out. So then by the end, I was like, wait, who killed who? And wait, who was the victim again? Like, I was so confused. And then obviously the second book came out, and I do still want to read it because I like the writing and I like the characters a lot. They're very cute because it's just a bunch of old people trying to solve crime. That's basically what the book is about. It was partially my fault that I didn't like it as much because I was just so confused, and I was very busy in this period of time where I kind of forced myself to read instead of really enjoying it. The Silent Patient, and it's a wonderful book. It's just really good. Twist had me. It just had me. Like, the way the twist was delivered and just the way that the author wrote it, I was just amazed. Like, how can you come up with something like that? It's basically just about this wife kills her husband, and immediately after that, she's decided to never speak ever again. Not a single word has come out of her mouth in court, nothing. So one psychotherapist decides to make her speak. And it sounds a bit sexual, but it was intriguing. And yeah, it's absolutely worth the hype. Then I read Death of an Outsider. These are Hamish Macbeth mysteries. 3 other ones that I still have to read, but I really like them. They're really short murder mysteries. They're cozy mysteries, so to say. Yeah, I gave this 4 stars because it was just enjoyable, but it wasn't like, But I think now I would give it more like a 3 stars, just because I give books that I enjoy, but I just enjoyed it. Like, I don't really have much more to say about it. What it's about says in the title. Then I read Two of Us Can Keep a Secret, which a lot of people think is the 3rd book in the One of Us is Lying series. It's not. It's just by the same author. I really like this book. So it took me a while to get into, but eventually I got into it and I didn't really stop reading. Like, I was hooked as like a mystery does. I was gonna give it 4 stars, and then literally the last sentence of the entire book is what made it a 5 stars, because it answers all of your questions. It just fits. It's the last puzzle piece, so to say. So I gave this 5 stars. That was just very well written. Good book. Definitely recommend. My camera is dying, so I'll charge it quickly and then I'll be back. Charged enough now. For the people that don't know, I have a septum piercing. I've had one for like over a year, but I only have it down every now and then because my dad doesn't know, I'm pretty sure. My mom does, but I'm still not sure if my dad knows, so I'd rather play it safe. But yeah. Surprise, gals. If you hate it, leave. If you love it, comment this emoji. Emoji, not emoji. Emoji. Moving on. I read Verity. Another Colleen Hoover book. I liked it. It wasn't... People were hyping it up a lot. I do believe it's overhyped. I do understand the hype, if that makes sense. But the ending is pretty... It's kind of an open ending. It kind of leaves up to you to decide what part of the story you want to believe. So yeah, I mean, I gave it 4 stars. I liked it, but it wasn't 5-star worthy like some people said. But it was still a really good book. I still recommend it. I still like it. I do think it's a bit mind-boggling. The Spanish Self-Deception. This is again a very popular book. It's a slow burn. It's enemies to lovers workplace romance, and it is so cute. This did explain to me that I didn't like slow burns. I had never really tried slow burns, but now I know that I don't like them. It's maybe a bit of a slump. I like when people get to the point. Obviously with enough stuff in the front, but like I don't want. It just took a bit too long. But yeah, no, it was just a bit too long for my liking. But it's still a really, really good book. I like it. I give it 4 stars. I recommend. Then after that, I read such a nice book. I read Love Me Not, and this is part of the Helen Gray series. I think this year the 11th part is coming out. It's so many books. Basically, it's always about the same detective, so the cases are not necessarily linked, but if you can read them standalone, but they make more sense if you read them in order in all of them. But this is the 7th part. I didn't know it was a series until I started the book. But yeah, this one is about, there is a murder that happened, and then later in the day another murder happens, and they first think that these weren't related, but they obviously are. And then it's like a hunt majority of the interesting thing about this book is that you get multiple perspectives. They aren't specified, but you figure out really easily who it is. You also get the perspective of the killer. So, and like what they're doing and what's going through their mind, and that's really, really interesting, I think. I gave this 5 stars. I will never stop recommending this to people. I read all of the Heartstopper graphic novels. I gave all of them 5 stars. They were all literally amazing, and I still haven't gotten over them. The detail of these and the little things, it's so cute. It literally, like these two, they will warm your heart. These will break it and shatter it and warm it at the same time. Like already start volume 2, a few more heavier topics start to come into the picture, so check the trigger warnings. 3 is really bad and 4 is even worse, so just keep this in mind. All 5 stars, definitely recommend, and we'll never get over these. Then I read The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. It's you could call it a graphic novel. It's basically just lines, and it is technically a children's book, but it has such a great message, and it's so sweet. I read through this in like half an hour. Yeah, I don't have much to say about graphic novels because I don't want to spoil anything either. So, and I feel like everyone knows Heartstopper by now. Moving on. Then I read The Cousins, which is again from the same author as One of Us is Lying. I was gonna read this because basically I asked my friend who had read this if it was worth reading. This put me in the biggest slump I have ever been. That's actually a lie, I've been in worse slumps, but it put me in a quite big slump. The thing is, I still like the ending, I still like the book, I like the characters. The beginning just took too long. Like, getting into the story, like the world building and the character building, all that stuff, it just took too long for my liking. Yeah, this took me, I think, like a good 3 weeks to get through. That's why I read all the Heartstopper novels in between, just because I gave this 3 stars. It's basically about an entire family is disowned by the grandma, with no context either. But they supposed to know what they did. And then the grandchildren get invited to the grandma's resort. You know, they've never really met each other, they're not that close, so you kind of get that. And then obviously, like, why did the grandma disown everyone and all that stuff? So it's very intriguing and just interesting, but just it took very, very long. Then the next book I read was The Hating Game. I have a reading vlog on this because I watched the movie as well. But book, it was just a very enjoyable read. It was a cute romance. Were a few parts cringy, yeah, but like it's a romance. I don't mind if romances are cheesy and cringy. Enemies to Lovers, Workplace Romance, and it is really cute, and it's just a few things are just witty and funny, and I flew through this. This was really easy to read, and I definitely want to read more of Sally Thorne's books. Then I read Looking for Alaska, and I also watched the show, by the way. You know, but I really, really love this book, and it's super touching, and like literally my heart broke. John Green's writing is just amazing, and the quotes in this book, Jesus Christ. That's that. I gave this 5 stars. Then the next book I actually don't have with me because I gave it to my mom literally the second I finished it. I was like, Mom, you need to read this, but this is When They Find Her. I give this 5 stars. Literally, I flew through the book, and even the ending, it wasn't like, it was predictable, but just because the writing in the book was so good, and it was very like, it was very fast, it was very good. The ending was satisfying. It wasn't like, even though it was predictable, it was still satisfying, if that makes sense. Moving on, I only have 3 minutes left on my fucking card. Narnia book. I read this from our school's book club. We literally only read 1 book since I joined. But yeah, it's just our school's book club. And I read it, and it was first published in the 50s, so there's a lot of sexist stuff going on. And basically the entire book is symbolism, like with Christianity and shit. And it was not my alley. I think I gave like 2 stars. I just didn't like it. I'm sorry for all the Narnia lovers and fans out there. I just didn't like it. I couldn't eat it up. I had to force myself through this just for my book club as well. But like, if I didn't have to read this for my book club, I would have so DNF'd it. Moving on. I read The Fine Print, and Jesus Christ, did I love this book. Gave this 4.5 stars. It's a workplace romance. It's Grumpy Sunshine, so that's also very, very cute. And it's just like, and half of it is also kind of like we can't be together trope. It just warmed my heart. It was so, so cute. I was reading this while I was first talking to my boyfriend, so it was like the perfect time, and I'm so excited to read Terms and Conditions, which is the second book in this series. I bloody loved it. Yeah, mate. My SD card was full and my camera died at the same time. Moving on. I read Eeny, Meeny, and this is the first book in the Helen Gray series because, as I said, I'm collecting the entire series secondhand. So I decided maybe I should start with the first book so I have a start on the series, because this series is going to take me a while. It's 10 books, you know what I mean? So, that night I devoured this book. I think I gave it 4 stars. It's quite a big book, so it took me quite a while to get through, especially because I was in the middle of studying for my end of year tests, which are luckily now over. I've officially summer vacation now. Yeah, no, I really, really liked it, and I'm very excited to continue. I constantly keep looking there because the rest of the series is there. Not all of them, but I have quite a few. But I'm really excited to continue the series just because the writing is so nice, you know, the chapters are short. And it's just going to be familiar, so it's going to be nice. And then I finally read It Ends With Us. I have a reading vlog on this, but I ended up giving it 4 stars. I liked it, but I didn't cry. But I do think it was a very touching story, and I do think that it's a topic that we have to talk about more. Definitely check the trigger warnings, because the majority of the book is about domestic abuse, and I did know that, so my dumbass decided to not check the trigger warnings. There's a lot more involved, obviously, so please check the trigger warnings. But yeah, I enjoyed this book. I'm sorry, but a synopsis like this, that's too much information. I don't want to go into a book knowing this much. Every time I go, like, I look for romance books. Romance books specifically, their synopsises are always like a whole page long. I don't need to know that much. And then the last book I've read this month, this year, is Chatime. I also have a reading vlog on this. I've been doing a lot of reading vlogs recently. I gave this 3 stars. It took me so long to get into. Like, literally, up until like page 120, I was 100% sure I was going to DNF it. I didn't. I finished the book, and I liked it. I liked the ending, but it was so slow and repetitive, and I was just like, this is not for me, especially because it's like a fantasy dystopian book, and I'm not really into that genre, and I like the ending, but I'm not going to be continuing the entire series. I'm sorry. I know that people say that, like, after the first book it gets better, but I'm not going to invest so much money, but like, spend so much money on a series that I'll probably end up not liking. But those were all the books I've read so far, and Jesus Christ, this took me 1.5 hours to film. This has been a wild, it's been a wild, I want to say a wild ride, so I'm on wild. It's been a wild, guys. I'm very excited to see what other books I'll finish this year. I definitely want to get through a majority of my TBR because, Jesus bloody Christ, I have a massive physical TBR. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it was longer than usual, and I know that it's a lot of information coming to your little head. Not saying that your head is little, but I'm very excited to do this again at the end of the year to see the difference. Maybe I've changed in genres, probably not. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I hope you got some recommendations out of this. Comment recommendations for me. If you're still watching, comment the leaf emoji, because leaves are cool. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and that's it. I'll see you when I see you.